What's up, everybody? Joe Ringen here again with another book review. Well, I guess not really a review. I'm kind of getting off my plan of this channel. I'm doing a discussion, not a review. I can't review this book. I'll talk about why in a little bit. But I'm going to talk about the Arabian Nights, the Sir Richard F. Burton translation that I just finished. It took about a month. This is a chunky one, man. Look at this thing. This is huge. And like, dang. Pretty small words and stuff. But what a cool edition. This is the Barnes & Noble version. Love it. It's so cool. I really like the cool, like, sort of mystical, exotic cover. Awesome. Really sets the tone for the words within. But you know, like I said at the beginning here, I can't review this book like I do with all the others. This is like, it's a collection of stories for one, so it's not really the same. It's on the same plane as the other books that I read a lot. So, or like most books. So I just don't feel right comparing it to other books since it's so different. Plus, it's like a mammoth of literature. I mean, obviously it's good. It's lasted so long, and it's so foundational to a lot of tales and stories we read today that me rating it would have no merit. It wouldn't even matter. Throw it out. Throw my rating out. Kind of like with Shakespeare. Throw it out. My rating means nothing. I'm a book noob, and you know, I don't have a degree in literature or anything. So my thoughts are my thoughts. And hopefully, you know, the point of this video is more to just talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't, why people should read it, who should read it. You know, maybe there's a lot more people like me who aren't literature scholars who just love reading. And so hopefully you can connect with that. And I think you should pick up the book for most people. I'll talk about who I think shouldn't. But so there's the beginning. Oh, but before I talk about how awesome this book is, I want to talk about another book that I think is awesome. Not as awesome as Arabian Nights, but still pretty awesome. It's the book I wrote. It's called The Ballad of Ages, Tale of Epic Fantasy. Yeah, besides reading, I really enjoy writing. And I went on a quest to read a lot of awesome books. That's kind of the point of this channel, is just to read a lot of awesome books and further my knowledge of literature, which hopefully will help me become a better writer too. So I hope you enjoy this video of the Arabian Nights. So yeah, this has been a daunting book. It's kind of like a rite of passage for me, I think, for someone who wants to become a more well-rounded and well-learned reader and lover of all things literature. This is a classic. It's a mammoth. It's a giant of literature. And I've always viewed it as important because it's so foundational to a lot of the stories that I love and want to read. You can tell. I mean, so these tales were written in like 600 to 900s AD. So it's been a while, right? These are pretty classic. And you know, that's a pretty monumental time in history. That's right at the start of the religion of Islam. That's like right after Muhammad died. He died in like early 600s. And then Arabia became the Islamic Arabia. So that's where these tales take place. That's the setting, that's the culture. And I've always had just a very unexplainable love of like the desert. I don't know if that makes sense. Kind of that desert vibe, kind of the ancient, like mysterious, magical, spiritual, just like fertile setting of the desert and like Arabia. And I've always been drawn to those sort of things, like Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, it sounds stupid, but Aladdin. And all these other cool movies that now I've sort of been finding that are free on Tubi. All these old Hollywood movies that are sort of set in like Arabia or like ancient Arabia. I just think there's something so like fantastical and like just mystical about that setting. It's and makes sense too because like with my religion, Christianity, that's where a lot of this takes place. I mean, like Israel. Israel's not in Arabia. Like that's not what I'm saying, but I'm kind of getting off topic. But it's just a very spiritual setting, and I think a lot of cool things and stories come out of those type of settings. So maybe that's why. But I've been really on a kick of like reading books set in the desert, and especially like ancient Arabia. I want to find some really ancient, like Persian or some stories like that because I honestly that's one of the surprises. I thought Arabian Nights was like super ancient. Um, I was almost surprised how more modern these stories are than I thought. I thought it would be like pre-Christ or something, but like sort of Old Testament era. But this is much more modern than that, and they're good stories and stuff. But I'm going to try to find even more ancient Arabian or like Persian tales and stuff. It's kind of interesting too with if you know current events of what's going on with United States, Israel, and Iran. It's big in the news, and that's where these tales take place. Like Iran, that's a big area of these tales. So, sometimes the stars line up, and you just read things at the right time, and it just anyway. So what are these tales about? What is this? Why are these tales? Why do they hold up so well over all these times? Because we don't live in that culture these days. So why do these tales hold up? Well, really for the same reasons that a lot of the tales in the Western literature canon hold up. The things we think about like, oh gosh, Beowulf, all those sort of things. Because at the center of it, they all boil down to the same sort of themes that stick with humanity and every human being resonates with. And so these tales really highlight those. The main things I picked up on is it seems like the hero or the main person of the story is sort of on a quest or has a big desire for like one of three things, right? Status or power. It's usually some sort of urchin or some peasant who wants to rise the ranks. Or also what happens a lot, it's a very hierarchical society in these tales. And so a lot of times there's like a prince who has 3 brothers or something, right? And one of them wants to sort of jump the other and become next in line for king kind of thing. We've heard these tales a lot. So there's power struggles or struggles with other kingdoms. So, timeless tales that resonate with all humanity. So power struggle, and then money, finding treasure, bettering your status in life, not necessarily having authority over people, but just finding treasure. So you're rich and well off, sort of skipping the work hard step and just getting the money. But it's interesting because I thought about that too, because I sort of laughed in a lot of these tales. I'm like, oh man, all these people, they just want to get rich and they don't want to put in, put on their boots and go out and work, right? And that's a very American view. I'm American, so that's my view. That's just how I'm raised here. That's how we're taught. Work hard and great. Life's good. Not always the case, and that's not always the case especially in this time period of Arabia. It's very hierarchical. If you're born a peasant, you're a peasant. No change. Doesn't matter how hard you work. And so I get it why a lot of people want to go out and find treasure, find magical treasure or whatever. So that's a theme of a central theme of a lot of these tales is rags to riches through fantastical means, which is kind of fun to read about. There's a lot of sort of magical items and things that or like genies, right? We think about genies in Aladdin, and genies are present in a lot of these tales. That's a cool thing about these. A lot of the sort of fantasy books we read, or I read, or we have a lot of at like bookstores in America are very Western, right? And so we get things like elves and dwarves and wizards and dragons, and there's sort of those things in the Arabian Nights, but But it was really fun to read about genies and like ifrits and whatever, like all their sort of different creatures that, or maybe not creatures isn't the right word, races of beings. Um, you don't read a lot in the books we read. And so it's kind of fun to see them in these tales and sort of get to know them a little better. It's kind of cool. That was I really enjoyed that part. Just the setting, the Arabian fantasy beings and items and magical things. It's really cool. Really cool. Okay, and so the third thing is like love, or honestly, more so in these tales, lust. Usually some beautiful woman who's like a princess, and the lowly guy can't get her unless he is rich, or the tale of Aladdin. But okay, side note, Aladdin is in the Arabian Nights. The story is Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. It's very different than the Disney version. So that was an interesting surprise. I guess it shouldn't have been surprising that Disney would sort of butcher it, but to be fair, you can't you couldn't really market that to a family. The tale as written in the Arabian Nights. So I'm going to go to another thing I noticed. I was very surprised about this when I started it, and basically from page 1, I was very surprised for some reason, and maybe it's because of the movie Aladdin, the Disney movie. But I was very under the assumption that these were sort of children's tales, almost like Grimm's fairy tales. I thought it'd be sort of like that. And I get the Grimm's fairy tales isn't really the children's book tales, but kind of like the same concept. Maybe more like C.S. Lewis. This is not like C.S. Lewis, by the way. Like Narnia. So I always thought this was kind of like kids stories. That is not the case, man. That is not the case. From like page 1, I realized that very quick. There's a lot. This is more aligned with Game of Thrones, honestly, or Song of Ice and Fire. This is very like adult, graphic, very violent, and just they don't pull any punches. There's a lot of scenes where it's just like, oh yeah, and he just sliced his head off and was rolling on the ground, or like he just impaled him and like pulled his entails out and stuff, and like it's just like it's there, it happens, okay, it's normal. And it's at times it's almost funny how Richard Burton, he's a really good translator, I think. The way he can translate these stories in there, it's very poetic, almost Shakespearean. It's not on the level of Shakespeare, but it's very poetic and musical and rhythmic, and it's very good. But the way he describes the things is just kind of like you could tell it's very just like, proper Englishman, but he's describing people getting butchered, and like, this is kind of cool, kind of funny. And there's very like explicit like sex scenes in this book too. So like, yeah, it's not a kid's book. Like, a lot of violence, and like women are objects, like very much so. And it's just, yeah, I mean, maybe that's just the culture. I'm sure this is, well, I don't know. I wasn't there, maybe, but the culture is very much like that, I guess, reading history in this time period. So there's that. So that's mainly the people I would not recommend this book to is children. Don't read this to your children. Yeah, it's not a kid's book. And so that kind of ties into the things I didn't like about it. And if you watch some of my other videos, it's kind of the same thing as that I don't like in most fantasy books. Like I don't need the explicit description of things. You can imply it. Like I like good stories, good quests, good characters. And I understand just like things happen, violence happens, sex happens. I don't need a description of it. And you can say it happens or imply it. These tales choose to describe it. And it is what it is. It's definitely not as explicit as like Game of Thrones, but it's close. The other thing that bugged me, and it's just the time. I don't fault it for being in the stories because like that's just a product of the time these tales were written in. That's just the cultures. Is just like all the treatment of like the slaves and how people are objects in a lot of the case in this culture. Like you can just kill them, it doesn't matter, or like you can just sleep with them and kill them and it doesn't matter. Like, you know, it's just like some people don't have value in these books, just depending on what part of society you're in, and that's pretty sad. So, you know, enduring through that for, 700 some pages it can be kind of like, all right, here we go. But again, at least taken for a snapshot of history, it's valuable in that sense. Plus, it also serves to remind me that, thank God I wasn't living back then. Like, oof. I would have either been like someone that's in high class and have probably been totally corrupted by all the vices and things that you get in that class, or I would have been a lonely peasant and just had a horrible life and been killed. There's really not anything in between. And so, yeah, I'm thankful I live where I live and when I live. And so reading books like this, if nothing else, and I say this for every book, it's important to read these books, even if they sort of conflict with your worldviews and your ideals, because then it reinforces why you have your ideals and why they're good. So it's good to read things that aren't always in line with what you agree with or what you support, again, because then it can help reinforce your own ideas and views, and also warn you against the dangers of other views, and by seeing how they play out in these tales. So, man, I go on and on about this because there's a lot of tales. I will talk a little bit more, but I didn't like every single tale. Some of them I really loved. Some of them I really did not love, but I powered through them all. And I'll probably make another video talking about the individual stories themselves. I don't know if I'll do one per story that I liked, or maybe just one sort of longer video of all of them. I don't know yet. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But there was a lot of good stuff in a lot of these tales. So, very cool. Things that I haven't ever read before. Very unique ideas that are unique to, I'm sure, this culture in this area of the world. So, very cool. Very fun to read. What else? I don't know. Maybe a strategy of reading this, because again, it's so huge, is like, for me, I read some weekends, I just read straight through it, probably 5 or 6 tales. I think on average they're about 40 pages each. Some are longer, some are shorter. So you could just kind of read through a bunch. What I did is I read through a bunch, stopped, read another shorter book, and came back to it instead of just reading straight through, because, they're natural stopping points. They're tales. It's not like just one huge book, one story. So that's one strategy. Maybe that works for you. That's what worked for me. Speaking of tales, that's one of the really cool things about this story, and I think this has got to be like the first like collection of stories that sort of had this idea, is, so it's tales within tales. And what that means, it's not just a collection of like short stories like we think of today. Like, Ray Bradbury has this, or Stephen King has like a book of short stories. No, they're all sort of connected under one overarching plot. And it's really clever how that works. So like the main story is the hero of, I guess, the whole Arabian Nights. Her name is Scheherazade. And it's interesting because as much as like women are degraded in these stories, there are a few that are awesome and like really heroic and have really strong. And Scheherazade's one of them. And she's the main hero or heroine of the whole tale. So like that's pretty cool. Anyway, so what's happening is, in the main tale, the main story, the king of Samarkand is, for whatever reason, I forget exactly. There is a reason, but I forget what it is. He decides he's going to take one virgin girl into his chamber every night, sleep with her, and then kill her the next morning so that no one else can enjoy her. Like, what? First of all, what? Again, not a kid's book. So all these women are getting killed, and and people are freaking out and very sad, obviously. People's daughters are getting killed. So then one steps up, like a very courageous heroine, Scheherazade. She has an idea of how to stop this. So she volunteers to go, And she's through the course of the night, she's like, I'm going to tell you some tales, King. He's like, okay. So he tells her tales. And her plan is these tales are going to be so good and he's going to be so interested he won't kill her the next day because he wants to know what happens next and he wants to hear another tale and so on and so on. And it goes on for 1,001 nights. That's why sometimes you hear this called the 1,001 Nights. Anyway, so it goes on and on. And so all these tales are her telling the king these tales. So it's tales within tales. And that's really, really interesting. And I'm sure this is the first that's done it. I had to smile when I read this because it reminded me so much of the Star Wars tales. If you've ever read the Star Wars Tales books, it's kind of the same thing. There's like an overarching plot, and then there's tales within tales, like Tales of Jabba's Palace, Tales of the Empire, stuff like that. I'm sure that drew right from the Arabian Nights. I would be shocked if it didn't. Anyway, so at the end, kind of a spoiler, I guess, but at the end, it's been years, right? 1,001 Nights. Scheherazade has had, I think, 3 kids with the king. And so finally he realizes, oh, like, I can't kill you. You're the mother of my children. And now he's happy and great. So he makes Scheherazade the queen, and then he stops killing all these women and everything's great. So it's, I guess, a happy ending. But Scheherazade's so cool, and she's a really courageous character, and it's kind of cool to read about her. Speaking of that, so one of the coolest things, I did not expect this at all, but one of the coolest things about reading the Arabian Nights, and again, I love sort of reading, like, and sort of connecting or consuming media together, if that makes sense. I'm not explaining it well, but like reading a book and watching the movie of it, or reading a book and then there's another book referenced in that book, so then you read that reference book next, or like sort of tying things in, sort of like the Wikipedia link of consuming media. I love that sort of strategy and super fun. Anyway, so I was wanting to like listen to sort of like desert Arabian music while I was reading this. I like to listen to instrumental music while I read. And so I was Googling or whatever, and then I came across there's actually, like, Arabian Nights didn't only inspire the literature, it inspired classical musicians to write music about the stories. So I came across this awesome symphonic poem, I think is what it's termed, by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, who's one of the big 5, I think they're called, Russian composers. He's amazing composer. Side note, I think Russian composers are probably the best. They have such awesome, like, epic symphonies and music. Anyway, so I was so happy to find there's a symphonic poem of 4 movements called Scheherazade. It's totally based off the Arabian Nights by Rimsky-Korsakov. Oh my gosh, you guys, listen to it. It is the most epic and like beautiful music I've ever. It's my favorite classical piece of music now, and I never expected that. It's so good. Like, if you like sort of the romantic, like, adventure sort of, think Star Wars, Indiana Jones, but this is so much better. Not saying I'm not putting John Williams down, but like, listen to Scheherazade, Rimsky-Korsakov. I mean, and I found this this album used. It's great. I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully you can see it. This is the vinyl record. Can you see that? Here's Scheherazade. How cool. Of just like a picture of that. Like, but the main violin theme of Scheherazade is just so good, and it sticks in your head forever, and I hope it stays there forever. It's amazing. Just go listen to it. Just find it on YouTube. And if you don't like it, then don't subscribe to my channel. No, you can still subscribe. but that's just the fun. I love all the tie-ins, and you can sort of just find the web of how things are connected in the world, and it's just really cool. And I'm going to try to do that for other classical works. I know there's a lot. Shakespeare has obviously how there's music connected to it or inspired from it. I love it. Love it. So again, the Arabian Nights, really cool. I'm glad I read it. I'm certain I'm going to have a much better understanding and appreciation of literature and things I read going forward. Having read these Arabian Nights, and just seeing how they've inspired other works that I read in the future and stuff. And I recommend them to any fan of literature, any fan of history, and any fan of fantasy for sure. I could see sci-fi too. There's a lot of magical, otherworldly beings and situations that happens in these stories. I do not recommend these to children. Don't read these to your kids at night. Oh, they'll grow up fast reading these, man. But save them for your children for when they become adults. Arabian Nights, really cool. No rating, just great. The world has proven they're great. So, again, I might make another video of the individual stories that I liked, because I did take notes on them, and a lot of them I just remember because they were so vivid, and they stick with me. So, anyway, until that video or whatever video comes next, all of you have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon.